All right, welcome to another Holistic Creative Chat, and I'm super excited to welcome guest Michele Lisenbury Christensen. Did I get that right?
Exactly.
Excellent. Of hotloverevolution.com. And if you don't know her work, you should, because she's talking about all the things we want to, but that we don't. So, oh my gosh. On your site, Michele, let's see, Love Doctor with Soul and Mama with Mojo, right? Right? I think that I've seen that on your site, as well as you're so funny. You have all these funny little clips and these things that you call yourself, and it just always makes me giggle, and I'm always like, I love her. I love her. But the bottom line is you are passionate about sharing about relationship, love, libido, pleasure, sensuality, the way we relate, the way we work with our power and our passion, the power play in relationship. And you have incredibly inspiring work that at many times over the years that I've been reading your work, I know has been helpful for my own relationships, current ones, as well as reflection process about the stories of relationships we all create through our lifetimes. So super happy to have you here and to get to share you in this way. And also that you are a contributor for Spectrum 2015 this year. I'm so glad.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So these conversations, where I like to start is if you could talk a little bit about how creativity shows up in your life, whether that's a creative practice or your take on the creative process.
Yeah. It's funny because for me in my life right now, my works of art and my creations are in, I think, three primary areas. My marriage, my mothering, and my business. So my work with people, and then also some of the things that you talked about, like the language that I put around that that's poetry, and it has me write every week. So that kind of creativity, and we're actually working to see, because I love spoken word, to see what form a podcast wants to take in my world. So that those things. Yeah, it'll be really fun. I'm excited, and I'm very inspired, by the way. I just have to drop this because I'm evangelizing for it everywhere. Dear Sugar, Cheryl Strayed, and Steve Almond, who have both written the Dear Sugar advice column on the Rumpus, are now doing a podcast that I just pant for the next episode of. I hope that my podcast can be that good.
I'm gonna have to check that out. I haven't listened in yet, but how fun. Yeah.
It's amazing. And so it's like those, so I've talked mostly about the third one, the business piece, but for me also, motherhood either falls into this just super drudgerous, I'm repeatedly regulating myself so that I can show up for them in a way that makes room for their immaturity, frankly. They need so much from me, and they're doing so much that I want to be that kind of grounded space for them. And that will either just be sweat and blood and tears, or it will be something really beautiful. And that's why it's crucial to me to perpetually, deliberately make that a creative act. And then back to the first one I mentioned, that's really a reflection of the heart of my work with others, is if your marriage isn't a creative act, if it's not a place where you are perpetually seeking to express the best of you and make something that you've never seen before, to bring forward what you dream of and create it, and to listen in for what your partner dreams of and maybe doesn't even hope is possible, and make that, then it's just kind of the law of entropy, that your relationships will deteriorate over time, because they do. And all of us have so much shadow, the more you know somebody, the more of their beauty you know, but also the harder they are to be with. So we gotta keep it growing. So that's how it lives in my life. I hope that answered the question.
Absolutely. I love you just have such a beautiful way of bringing the creative perspective into the relationship piece. I've got tingles right now about it, because it's so important. I think, and maybe this is just my own take, but there's so much talk out there about relationship and marriage and partnership. And it feels very boxed in, cookie cutter, kind of, these are the things you should do to make it work. But you so inherently reflect this notion that it's got to be creative within your unique relationship, within those two unique people, two unique creative beings coming together with their different perspectives and needs and desires. And you've got to figure out what that is. And so no relationship is going to look the same. Like, that just emanates from what you're speaking of your work. And I think that's so important. And really, it's like, phew, okay, we're okay. Like,
yeah, right.
We get to be totally different.
Right. No, that's okay. That's fine. I promise. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's really important work, I think. And you bring that, and even just listening to you talk, you do this when you write too. So it's really cool to see that this is the way you speak about it. But it's like you're sparking, like you're igniting the spark into this creative approach for relationship too. So I really feel that creativity emanating from you. And it's definitely, obviously, I think anybody listening can feel any type of relationship work is healing work, for sure.
It has to be, yeah. And it's also perpetually risky. Yes. I'm really in this today because I sent out a love note this morning. I think of it as a love note, really, to the people who are in my community, and I try to share something that's rich and real and alive for me. And this is an old story about our engagement, and when I called it off, and that was probably the first time that I kind of, if we think of it as a work of art, I dismantled it. Like you've been painting and you just paint over it and just get a flat canvas again. Yeah. Except that it's got those layers underneath it, right? We can't hit rewind, but we can go, wait, stop. And so I shared that whole story there, but what that has led to is a series of times when I've taken big risks, kind of put the relationship on the line for the sake of its next iteration, for the sake of something more. And there aren't any guarantees. And our intimate relationships are so the center of our security for many of us. I think that there are people who actually, that's maybe a very enlightened place where you don't vest your relationship with your security, but I know I do, and most of the people I work with do. And so to take that secure place and then ask it for more is to risk losing that. And so that's the, something really juicy that can kind of keep us on our learning edge as well.
And I sense too, from what you're saying, like, even the step to do that, to take that risk, often even comes from retouching in or rechecking in with our center, our truth, what it is that we truly want and desire and know that we need in order to thrive and actually be able to give our fullest. And at least, like, when you gave the painting metaphor, you couldn't have given a better one to me. So, and that's what that is often about, is like, somehow you recognize that you're off center. Yeah. And so you have to risk it all.
And it might have been a good painting. It could have been a good painting. And I might have walked in and been like, no, don't paint over that. Right. And you were like, I know, I get it, but I have to. Yeah. And it's so wrenching. And I walked with a girlfriend and neighbor of mine I guess it was Monday this week. And I told her, we're kind of doing one of these iterations again. And it was like, she said, so is it like you forgot? Did he backslide in some way and now you're asking him to come back to where he was, or have you changed? And I said, no, I think it's really like building on what we had. And we had come to such an amazing place that it let me, kind of like when you're hiking, it let me see further than I could see from further down on the mountain. And so then when I caught sight of the new vista, I wanted it. Yeah. So we couldn't go to this new place if we hadn't already consolidated a lot of wins and gains. Yes. And so, but that's so right next door to being like a greedy, persnickety bitch. This is such a great relationship. And you know what else I want?
Yeah. But isn't that the truth? I mean, that's how we are. We're complicated beings. And that is the process, is that we never get to where we want to go without wanting the next thing too. It's just in us. It's like, it's just in us. And it's beautiful and it's exciting. Yeah.
And especially if we can have the discipline to both be in gratitude and savoring of what we have and that aspiration of what we don't have, rather than making where we are or where we've been wrong.
Right. Yeah.
rejecting it.
Honoring the growth together and the vision that comes from it. So that's so beautiful. All right. So the question I ask everybody on this little chat series is, how do you define healing today?
It's like it's a becoming and a rebecoming. I mean, I think that's what we were just talking about is a great segue, because healing is both restoration, of something that entropy has broken, but also recognizing that we're not going to try to, that it's always sort of foolish to try to recreate what used to be, and I'm right up in the middle of this right now. For me, healing, to get really personal and transparent about it, I'm 41 years old. The past 3 years of being a mother of 2 children has piled weight on my body, because how I've dealt with the stress of holding it all, and the need to ground myself is just eating. And in a way, like, I've been out of doing that super compulsively for at least a year, but this is where it is. And at 41, my body is not as plastic as it used to be. Yeah. And so my ability to shape shift just works differently. So healing means getting to know, what is this body? What does wellness and aliveness and ultimate, my best pleasure look like now? And how do I take care of this so that 40 years from now, I've got what I want to have as, hopefully a grandmother, as an 81-year-old sexual, vibrant being.
Yeah. I really hear in what you're saying, like it's really about having this dynamic fluidity with how to honor yourself through the process.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. So I want to touch on briefly the workshop offering that you're going to be bringing to Spectrum this year, because it is so juicy. So you've called it The Queen and the General, integrating masculine and feminine power in life, love, and action. That is so good and so important. And would you mind speaking a little bit to that vision that you have for that? What's inspired you with that? It's just so juicy on so many levels.
Yeah, I love it, and I'm so thankful to you for giving me a place to build it this year, because I'm in a discipline, actually, that I only have about 15 hours a week to work.
Yeah.
Because I'm in this space with my daughter, who's turning 3 today.
Oh,
and
happy birthday!
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and anniversary. Every birthday of a child is the anniversary for their mama. So it's a special day for both of us. And my son, who's almost 7, and so I'm being very disciplined about not creating new programs, but I wanted to create this one. So being able to do it within the scope of what, the right size for the Spectrum is really fun. So this builds on work that I've been doing since 2005, and what we called it back then, and still do, and this is actually a different website, workingwithpower.com, is work that I have done in women's retreats and in the corporate environment. And there's a real framework of 12 elements of power. And they're paired, 6 feminine and 6 masculine. And they have to do with the way that we think, the way that we hold others, the way that we solve problems, the way that we prioritize, how we know who we are. So that structure was sort of the basis before I even started seeking teachers to help me integrate more of my feminine. It was how the feminine sort of dropped in for me way back when. And so I've been teaching that and using that with women and with men for years. And now I'm steeped in this arena of relationship and sensuality for women, and women really dropping into our feminine power and our embodiment, and what women have brought to me and what has come up in my own work is the recognition that we have this divine feminine, that I now call the queen. You have this regal, knowing, wise self. And then you have a part of you that gets shit done, and that is so revered by our culture. That is, and thank you,
Right.
all of our mothers and grandmothers who have paved the way for us to be able to do whatever we want to do, to make things happen and to have the freedom and the right to do that, at least in this country, and to fight for it for women all over the planet. So that's great. And the general, I think of it as like I wrote a story about it once, or I said, the general said, "I'm so sorry, my queen. Today is an important day in the battle. So we're going to have to," and with that, guards came in and they tied me up and they put tape over my mouth and they put me in a cage at the back of the cavalry, and we rode all day and I didn't know where we were or what was happening. And they took me out that night and they said, "Well, we fought hard for you and we prevailed." And I said, "I don't give a shit. Tomorrow I ride." And they said, no, we couldn't risk you. We couldn't put you out in that position of, it's too dangerous. This is too important. The queen has to be protected. And the general has to make decisions when the chips are down. And isn't that what happens inside us? Wow. The general wants to make the decisions because it's high stakes, or because we're so busy, or because I feel overwhelmed, or because time is tight. And that is precisely when we have to say, no, I shall ride. Ooh. I'm the queen.
Yes.
And make our choices from our yoni, make our choices from our center, and she can hold all the priorities at once. And even if it were a situation where we were going into battle, I can't wait till we have a female president. Right. Because when's the last time we weren't at war? Yeah. She will have to lead us into war, or she will, most likely. I don't know about have to. We haven't broken the paradigm enough for her to not do that. But I just think that the queen has a different approach, and she can hold so many priorities. So the general is not to say men are like that. It's to say that you have a part of you that is, and it is a little more a little more single faceted.
Yeah. I've called my general Coach Stan for a few years. So it's totally making sense for me now.
He has a name.
and that story, oh my gosh, that is that the queen saying, "No, I will ride." That is, I will take the risk, like you were saying earlier. I will do this, come what may.
Yeah, it always gives me goosebumps and tears in my eyes, and I think of like Kate Blanchett, or the we're still watching her grow, but in Game of Thrones, there's the queen who is really still a girl, and she has advisors, and she has to perpetually tell her generals, remember your place.
That's right. Yeah.
Remember.
Beautiful.
I'm the mother of dragons.
Thank you again, Michele, for visiting with us today. And I'm going to put a little link to your website down below. Is there anything that you have coming up that you'd like to mention, or just the usual blog, newsletter, that sort of thing?
Yes, certainly. If you put the links to my bio, there are a lot of great free things people tend to really like.
There are, yeah.
Receive Him and Penetrate Her, my free ebooks for women and men. And then when people want to work with me as couples, Happy Couple School is how I do that. So.
Excellent. Thanks again. And thanks everybody for listening.
Namaste.